The desperate call. The message began as a whisper in the void, a trembling signal bouncing between dying stars. It carried with it fear, desperation, and the last hope of a people who could no longer fight. On a burning world at the edge of the Orion Rim, the alien race called the Vayari sent out their cry for help. Their cities were falling, their armies shattered, their fleets nothing but wreckage floating in black space. The Council of Stars, a grand hall of alien leaders, gathered to hear the message. Faces of every shape and color reflected the fire of the holographic display. The words were clear, spoken in broken, trembling tones. "We are overrun. We are dying. If anyone can hear this, help us." The silence that followed was heavier than any battle. The Council knew the truth. The invaders were too strong. They had torn through 10 systems already. They were merciless, consuming everything in their path. And now they stood at the gates of the Vayari worlds. If the invaders broke through, half the galaxy would fall. But what could they do? The fleets of the Council had been shattered in earlier battles. The armies were scattered. Leaders spoke with panic. Some demanded surrender, others begged for time, but there was no time. There was only one choice left, one ancient choice. An old voice rose in the chamber. It was Elder Taru of the Zalari. His body bent with age, his voice cracking like dry stone. "We have one chance," he said. "One hope, though it may be worse than our enemy." The chamber hushed. Even the youngest leaders leaned forward. Elder Taru's eyes burned with memory. "Send the call to them. Send it to the humans." The word fell into the air like a spark in dry grass. Some laughed in disbelief. Some gasped in terror. The younger races shook their heads. "Humans are only a myth," one shouted. "Old. Stories told to frighten us, a ghost race, nothing more." But the elders did not laugh. They remembered the wars long ago when Deathworlders walked among the stars. Humanity. Children of Earth. A world so hostile it forged them harder than steel. A species who fought the void itself and won. A species who disappeared from galactic space centuries ago. "They are gone," hissed a proud voice from the Kalari throne. "Even if they live, why would they answer? They abandoned the stars. They left us to our own wars." But Elder Taru raised his hand. "They are not gone. They are only waiting. They hear more than we know. Send the call. If they do not answer, we are lost anyway." The chamber erupted. In argument, some shouted against it, fearing what would happen if humanity returned. Others shouted for it, desperate for even a chance. In the end, desperation won. With trembling hands, the Council approved the sending of the SOS to the darkest corners of space, to the systems where humans were said to have vanished. The signal burned out of the Council halls, racing through wormholes, riding beams of light across galaxies. A desperate cry carried by the last strength of the Vayari's machines. Then came silence. Days passed, worlds burned, refugees flooded into safe zones. The Council waited for an answer, but none came. Whispers spread that the humans were truly dead, or worse. They had heard and chosen not to come, but then, strange things began to happen. First, the comm relays at the edge of the Orion Rim went dark. Entire networks stopped working. Patrols sent to investigate vanished without reports. Then, in the dark stretch between stars, sensors picked up movement, massive, deliberate, and silent. Something was coming. At first, the Council thought it was the enemy, another armada pushing through, but then they heard it. A voice across the void, not in broken speech, not in fear, but in iron. The transmission was only 4 words: "We heard your call." The chamber of the Council froze. The voice was harsh, human, the kind of voice that carried no mercy, no weakness, only strength. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy trembled, not at their enemy, but at the return of the Deathworlders, and somewhere in the void, stars were blotted out. A fleet was arriving, its hulls scarred, its weapons old but alive, forged in battles long forgotten. The human war fleet had returned, the desperate call had been answered. But the galaxy did not yet know if salvation or destruction was what they had invited. The forgotten legends. The first transmission shook the Council to its core. "We heard your call. The words echoed again and again through the chamber as if the stars themselves had spoken. For some it was hope, for others it was doom. The younger races whispered nervously. They had grown up hearing only fragments of stories, bedtime warnings told to children, legends of Deathworlders, savage creatures forged by storms, fire, and endless predators. The humans, the name alone carried weight, yet to them, it was fantasy. But the elders knew better. They remembered, or at least their grandparents had. They spoke of wars where humans had fought not for land nor for treasure but for survival. They told of how humans could breathe poison air, walk across burning sands, fight in the vacuum of space with nothing but sheer will. They were a race that refused extinction, no matter the odds. Now the council faced the reality that the myths were true. Humanity had heard them. Humanity had returned. Do not trust them, growled General Krava of the Threx. His mandibles clicked with unease. If they are real, they are worse than the invaders. They will come, not as saviors, but as conquerors. His words were sharp, meant to cut through hope, but others leaned forward with a different fire in their eyes. If they can fight, said Lyri of the Orun, her voice steady but desperate, then let them fight. Better slaves to humans than corpses under the invaders. The council divided, suspicion versus desperation, fear versus hope. Days passed, and the strange signals multiplied. Vast comm relays failed without explanation. Sensor buoys detected movement like nothing they had ever recorded. Gigantic shadows moved through deep space, each larger than cities. Then came the whispers. Merchant ships, explorers, and outposts reported seeing something massive slip through the dark. Engines so old they burned brighter than suns. At the refugee stations, the stories spread faster than food or water. Some claimed to have seen human ships, enormous war hulks with armored hulls scarred by centuries of battle. Others spoke of voices breaking into comms, harsh and commanding, always repeating the same chilling message. We heard your call. Still, the council refused to believe fully, until one night Elder Taru summoned them once more. In his hands was a piece of data, flickering and incomplete, but enough to freeze every voice in the chamber. It was an image, a fragment of a ship passing through the void, black and silver, shaped like a predator. Across its hull were painted words in an old, almost forgotten tongue, but one symbol was clear, the mark of Earth. The chamber erupted. Some leaders shouted for defenses to be prepared. Some begged to open negotiations at once. Others demanded the SOS be withdrawn before it was too late. Fools, Taru thundered, his weak frame trembling with sudden power. You called for them. You begged for them. Now they come, and when humans come, they do not leave empty-handed. The council fell into fearful silence. No one could deny the truth now. The myths had walked back into reality. The forgotten legends were flesh once again. Meanwhile, across the stars, the invaders pressed forward. Whole planets screamed as they fell. The galaxy burned. Yet in the Uiari, shadow of fire, the human fleet grew nearer. They did not rush. They did not answer every plea for help. They moved with purpose, silent and terrifying, like predators choosing their ground. The invaders who had seemed unstoppable began to slow. For the first time, their armadas hesitated, as if they too sensed the storm rising. Then, a single act changed everything. On the world of Vayar Prime, the invaders prepared to strike the final blow. The skies were dark with their warships, the defenders broken and scattered. The end seemed certain, until the stars above them blinked out. The Vayari looked up. Their enemies looked up, and all saw the same thing. Colossal shapes blotting out suns, engines like burning storms, guns that looked large enough to split moons in two. A human war fleet had arrived. The first shots fired were not warnings. They were a declaration. Railguns lit the sky, shredding invader ships into pieces. Planetary shields flickered with light as the humans cut a path straight through the enemy's strongest line. It was not a battle, it was slaughter. The forgotten legends had returned, and they carried fire and steel. But in the council halls, the question still remained: would the humans stop at saving the galaxy, or would they take it for themselves? The first shadow, The battle at Vayar Prime was not the end. It was the beginning. For the first time, the galaxy saw the humans not as myths, not as whispers, but as a fleet of steel and fire standing against the invaders. The images spread quickly. Refugees carried stories from system to system. Soldiers whispered to each other about the Deathworlders who had come. On every world, fear began to change. It was no longer just fear of the invaders. It was fear of the humans. In the ruins of Vayar Prime, survivors looked up at the black silhouettes of human warships hanging in orbit. They were not sleek or beautiful like the Council's vessels. They were jagged, brutal, armored beasts covered in scars. Their cannons glowed faintly, never cooling. Their engines growled like predators waiting to strike again. No words of comfort came from those ships. No songs of peace. Only silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Then came a second transmission. It cut across every channel, breaking into military networks, civilian networks, even private comms. The voice was deep, unshaken and final. "We are here, stand aside, or be swept away." The Council of Stars erupted when they heard it. Some cheered, thinking salvation had finally come. Others shouted, in rage, "They dare to threaten us. They act as if this is their war, as if these are their stars." The chamber shook with arguments. Fear grew, not just of what the invaders could do, but of what the humans would demand. But while the Council argued, the humans moved. Their fleets struck again and again. Each time they appeared without warning, their massive ships emerging from the void, as if they had always been there. They did not negotiate, they did not ask, they only fought. And wherever they fought, the invaders died in flames. Yet something about their movements unsettled the galaxy. The humans did not simply defend. They chose their battles carefully, sometimes letting worlds fall while they struck elsewhere. They acted with precision, as if following a plan no one else could see. Whispers spread in the dark. Were the humans here to save the galaxy or to reshape it? Were they truly answering the SOS, or were they using the invaders as an excuse to return and claim what was once theirs? On the trade world of Jalus, a refugee ship carried with it the first sighting of a human envoy. The alien crew described him in hushed voices. A tall figure in black armor, his face weathered, his eyes sharp like a blade. He said nothing at first, only scanned the room as if weighing every soul within it. Then, with a voice like thunder, he delivered a single message. "The Deathworlders have returned. The war is ours now." The words spread like wildfire. Some saw it as a promise, others as a threat. Meanwhile, the invaders themselves began to change. They who had never feared. Anyone now pulled their fleets back, regrouping, planning. They had tested the Council and found weakness, but against humanity they hesitated. For the first time, the galaxy's greatest predators found themselves hunted. In hidden war rooms, alien leaders watched grainy recordings of human battles. Railguns that split cruisers in half, missiles that shattered shields built over centuries, boarding pods tearing into ships like spears. And everywhere the same tactic, brutal, direct, merciless. Humans did not waste time with speeches, they killed. But the most frightening thing was not their weapons. It was their silence. They never explained who led them, never revealed where they came from, never spoke of Earth itself. They were shadows with teeth, and the galaxy could only guess at their true strength. One night, Elder Taru stood alone at the edge of the council chambers, staring at the stars. His old voice whispered words no one else could hear. "The first shadow has fallen across us. They have come back, not as ghosts, but as masters. Far away, beyond the edge of known space, the largest of the human warships prepared for its next strike. Its name was carved across its blackened hull in human script, unreadable to most aliens. But to those who understood, it carried a chilling name from forgotten wars. It was called the Vindicator, and wherever the Vindicator moved, the stars themselves seemed to go dark. The galaxy had begged for help, and now help had come. But in its shadow, no one knew what kind of future waited for them. Fire on the horizon. Galaxy thought it had seen the full power of the Deathworlders at Vayar Prime. They were wrong. That battle had only been the opening strike, A warning of what was to come. Across the stars, reports poured in. Human fleets were moving. They did not wait for the council. They did not follow orders. They appeared where they chose, striking invaders with fire and steel, leaving only wreckage behind. On the planet Calros, the people watched the skies turn red. Enemy warships descended in endless waves. Their weapons lit the atmosphere, shaking the earth with every strike. The defenders had already surrendered in spirit. They waited for death. But then, the horizon itself seemed to catch fire. Dozens of human warships tore through the dark engines. Blazing like comets, their railguns thundered, tearing apart the enemy's front line before it even reached orbit. Missiles streaked through the clouds like falling stars, exploding with storms of light that burned away the invader fleets. To the people below, it was not a battle. It was the arrival of gods. The council, watching through distant feeds, fell into stunned silence. Their most advanced weapons had failed against the invaders. Yet these humans, scarred, silent, relentless, had crushed them in minutes. "How?" whispered General Krava, his mandibles trembling. "How do they fight? Like this?" The answer lay not only in their machines, but in their nature. Humans did not fear death. They lived with it every day on their homeworld. On Earth, storms could wipe out whole cities. Predators hunted even the strong. Fire, flood, famine. These were not legends, they were life. And those who survived such a world carried its fury with them into the stars. But to the galaxy, their strength looked like madness. The humans gave no speeches of alliance, they sent no diplomats. After every victory, they left a single message burned into comm relays: stand aside or be swept away. This message terrified even those they had saved. On Calros, survivors cheered as the human fleet burned the invaders. But when the warships passed over their cities, the cheers died. Every window shook as those monstrous vessels blocked the sun. Their silence was a greater weight than the screams of war. Some worlds began to ask a dangerous question. What if the invaders were not the greatest threat? What if the humans were? Meanwhile, the invaders themselves had begun to change tactics. They no longer charged blindly into battle. They avoided human fleets when possible, retreating into the shadows of uncharted systems. Yet the humans hunted them anyway. Each engagement was brutal, swift, and absolute. Whispers spread through the galaxy that the humans were not fighting to save anyone. They were fighting to prove something, to remind the stars of who they were, to show that Deathworlders had never truly left. One refugee freighter carried a chilling story. Its captain swore she saw human soldiers during a boarding action. They were not like other armies. They fought in silence, blades and rifles moving as one. Even when wounded, they kept going. Their eyes burned with something she could not name. Rage, loss, hunger, perhaps all three. When her crew asked what the humans wanted, the soldier only said, "Balance." The council tried to understand, but nothing made sense. Why appear now, after centuries of silence? Why fight so fiercely when no alliance had been signed? Why demand nothing but obedience? Elder Taru alone seemed to understand. His voice was grim. They did not come for us. They came for themselves. We called them. But in truth, they were already coming. Far away, the largest human ship, the one they called the Vindicator, hung in orbit above a dying star. Its hull glowed with heat, its guns still smoking from battle. Inside, commanders studied maps of the galaxy, choosing the next strike. To the galaxy, their movements looked like salvation. But in truth, the humans were shaping the war into something else, something only they could control. And as more suns burned, red with the fire of human warships, the galaxy began to realize the truth. The SOS had not only called saviors, it had summoned a storm that no one could stop. The terms of survival. The war was changing, the galaxy could feel it. What had once been a hopeless struggle against the invaders was now something else. Wherever the humans appeared, victory followed. But so did fear. The Council of Stars gathered. Once more the chamber was heavy with silence. Each delegate stared at the projection above the table showing the latest reports: invasion fleets destroyed, systems reclaimed, planets saved, yet none of them cheered, none of them smiled, because, with every victory one message followed, the same words repeated in the same unshaken tone, stand aside or be swept away. Finally, the humans broke their silence. A transmission arrived, not to the council, not to leaders, but broadcast openly across every channel, heard by every soldier, every civilian, every child. The figure who appeared was not dressed in the robes of diplomacy. He wore armor blackened by war. His face was lined with age, scarred. His voice was low, steady, each word striking like a hammer. "We are the children of Earth," he said. "You called for us, and we came. We do not fight for your council. We do not fight for your thrones. We fight for balance. The galaxy has forgotten what it means to bleed, you will remember now." The chamber of the council erupted, cries of anger, cries of fear. Some shouted that the humans had declared war on everyone. Others whispered that perhaps this was the price of survival. But the message was not finished. "You ask what we want," the human said. "We want no slaves, no gold, no banners. We want only this, your obedience. When the storm comes, you will stand beside us, not behind us. If you refuse, then your worlds will burn with the same fire as our enemies." It was not a request, it was a demand. The terms of survival. Across the galaxy, the reactions were mixed. On the refugee worlds, where survivors still trembled from the invaders. Cruelty, many dropped to their knees. They cared little who ruled. As long as they lived, to them, humanity was not a terror but a shield. But on the proud worlds of the Council, rage boiled. The Kalari, the Threx, the Vorn, they would not bow so easily. "We are not slaves," General Krava spat. "We will never kneel to humans." His words carried into the council chamber, striking sparks of defiance. Yet even those who resisted could not deny the truth. Without the humans, the invaders would win. With the humans, the galaxy had a chance. But that chance came at a cost. Rumors spread that entire planets had already been given ultimatums. On Shalas, the humans landed troops without asking permission. Their soldiers cleared the streets of invader remnants, then turned to the governors and simply said, "You belong to us now." On Calros, when the leaders resisted, the humans bombarded the enemy, saved the planet, then dismantled the local fleet, leaving the world defenseless except under human protection. The message was clear: submit or perish. Elder Taru, his old eyes heavy, spoke what many feared to say aloud. "This is no alliance, this is conquest. They fight the invaders, yes, but they fight also for themselves, for their place in the stars. Humanity has not returned as saviors. They have returned as judges." Meanwhile, in the shadows of deep space, the invaders were watching. They too had heard the human broadcast. They too knew the terms, and for the first time since their endless campaign began, they hesitated. They had met enemies who fled, who begged, who surrendered. But now they faced an enemy who did not fear death, who demanded war, who demanded obedience not only from friends but from foes. The galaxy trembled between two fires, the fire of the invaders and the fire of the humans. Whispers grew louder. Which fire would consume them first? On a distant station, a child of the Oran species asked her mother a question. "Are the humans here to save us?" she said with wide eyes. The mother could not answer. She only held her child closer, staring at the stars, afraid of what was coming. Above it all, the human flagship. The Vindicator drifted in the void, silent and black. Inside, commanders studied maps, choosing the next worlds to strike. The galaxy thought it had called humanity, but in truth, it was humanity who had chosen to answer. The terms were set, survival had a price, and every race in the galaxy now had to decide: kneel to the Deathworlders or burn. The wrath of Earth, the Council had heard the terms. Some accepted, some trembled, and some defied. Pride burned too strongly in certain worlds. They would not kneel, not even to Deathworlders. The Kalari were the first to declare their refusal. Their fleets were vast, Their technology advanced. Their leaders laughed at the human ultimatum. "We do not bow," they said. "We will fight both the invaders and the humans if we must." Their arrogance spread quickly, inspiring other races to stand with them. But pride is fragile when fire falls from the sky. The humans did not waste time with more speeches. They did not send diplomats. Their answer came in steel. Above the Kalari capital world, the night sky turned red. Hundreds of human ships dropped. From the void, silent as shadows, the Kalari fleet scrambled, their warships rising to defend their home. But the battle ended before it truly began. Railguns roared, cutting through their shields like glass. Missiles rained down, striking with terrifying precision. Kalari ships burned one after another, their proud fleet reduced to wreckage in hours. On the ground, cities shook as human bombardments tore across the surface, not to destroy the planet, but to shatter its will. The survivors watched in horror as the humans descended. Soldiers in black armor moved through the ruins. They did not slaughter civilians. They did not plunder. Instead, they raised banners of earth and spoke the same words again. "You belong to us now." The galaxy gasped. The Kalari, once so proud, had fallen in a single night. Their leaders captured, their fleets gone. Their surrender was broadcast across every star system. And with it came fear. Other worlds that had considered defiance now hesitated. They saw what the wrath of Earth meant. It was not just victory, it was domination. Humans fought not to survive, but to overwhelm. Their wars were absolute, leaving no question of power. But there were still some who resisted. The Threk sent word that they would never kneel. General Krava himself swore before the council that his people would stand against the humans until the last breath. His words were filled with fire. But, even as he spoke them, fear trembled beneath his voice because the Threks had seen what happened to the Kalari, and they knew the humans were already coming. The invaders, meanwhile, began to falter. Their fleets avoided human contact whenever possible, retreating deeper into uncharted systems. They had thought themselves unstoppable, predators without equal. But now they had found prey with sharper teeth. For the first time, they feared still, the council could not rest. The galaxy was caught between two terrors, the endless hunger of the invaders and the unstoppable wrath of Earth. Elder Taru warned them again, his old voice heavy with sorrow. "Do you not see they do not fight like us, they do not seek treaties. To them, war is not a tool, war is their language. Every battle is personal, every victory is a message. They will not stop, not until the galaxy bows." His words proved true when the humans struck the Threks worlds. The Threks fought harder than the Kalari, their soldiers fearless, their generals cunning, but it made no difference. Human war fleets carved through their defenses. Human soldiers fought with a fury that broke even the strongest Threks lines. The battle was long, brutal, and merciless. In the end, the Threks were broken, their general captured, their proud armies scattered, their resistance crushed under the weight of Earth's vengeance. The council chamber fell silent when the news arrived. No one dared speak. No one dared move. They understood now what the humans were. Not just saviors, not just conquerors. They were wrath itself, forged by a world that demanded survival through fire and blood. In refugee camps, whispers grew louder. Children asked their parents if the humans were angels or demons. Survivors argued in hushed voices. Was it better to live under the rule of Deathworlders or to fall to the invaders? Above it all, the Vindicator drifted like a black storm cloud. Its scarred hull glowed faintly under distant suns. Inside, human commanders studied maps of yet more worlds. Their voices were calm, almost cold. They spoke of strategy, not mercy. They marked targets, calculated fleets, and prepared for the next strike. To the galaxy, the message was clear. Resistance would be met with annihilation. Obedience meant survival. And all who had once doubted now knew the truth. The wrath of Earth was not a story, not a legend. It was real. It was here. And it would not stop until the galaxy remembered who the true Deathworlders were. The New Order. The galaxy was silent, not in peace but in fear. The invaders had been broken, their fleets shattered, their advance halted. Everywhere the humans fought, the enemy burned. Yet with every victory, the galaxy's unease grew deeper. On 1,000 worlds, banners of Earth now flew, not raised by choice but by necessity. Cities saved from the invaders now stood under human command. Fleets once proud now followed human orders. Not their own leaders. The Council of Stars gathered again, but the chamber had changed. Many seats stood empty, their owners captured or forced into exile after defying the humans. The survivors sat, in silence, waiting, for they all knew what was coming. The human envoy appeared in the chamber, a tall figure clad in black armor. His face carried scars of countless wars. His voice was cold and steady. "You called us, and we came. You begged for help, and we answered. Now you will learn the cost." The words froze the chamber. No one interrupted. No one dared. "We do not rule for gold or crowns," the envoy continued. "We do not rule for thrones or palaces. We rule because the galaxy cannot rule itself. You have proven this with your endless weakness. You begged others to save you, and so you will live beneath those who can." Gasps echoed. Some leaders tried to speak, but the envoy raised a hand and silence fell again. "The new order has begun," he declared. "You will stand with Earth. You will fight as one under Earth. There will be no more broken councils, no more hollow treaties. There will be order, our order. And if you resist, you will meet the same fate as those who thought themselves untouchable." Outside, across the stars, humanity's fleet moved into position. The Vindicator stood at the center, a black sun around which the new galaxy would turn. Its scarred hull glowed faintly in the starlight, its guns silent yet promising fire at the slightest defiance. Whispers filled the galaxy. Some called it salvation, others called it conquest. Refugees on broken worlds kissed the ground where human soldiers walked, for to them survival was enough. They did not care about politics. They only cared that their children lived, but the proud worlds wept in silence. Their freedom gone, their flags replaced, their fleets broken. To them, humanity was not savior, but overlord. Yet even they knew better than to rise again. For the wrath of Earth still burned in their memories. Elder Taru spoke quietly in the chamber, his old voice weary. "We called for help, and they came. We called for saviors, but what we found was something else. We found judges, and now the stars belong to them." On the frontier, the invaders retreated into the black void, broken and shattered. But even as they fled, they whispered in fear, for they too had seen the Deathworlders. They too had faced their fury. And even the invaders knew this truth. The humans were the true predators of the galaxy. Years would pass, and children of every species would grow up hearing the same story. They would not be told about the weakness of the Council. They would not be told about the invaders. They would be told of the night the stars burned red, and the Deathworlders returned. They would be told of the new law, the new power, the new order, and always in those stories one phrase would be remembered, the phrase that echoed across every world, carved into history. "You called for us, and we answered." Never forget what that means. As the human fleet spread across the galaxy, fire and steel became the pillars of peace. The new order of Earth had risen, and in its shadow, the galaxy learned to bow.